Welcome to the podcast, everyone. We're here today to talk about finance and how it can be enabled with integration. I'm Matthew Small. I am now leading a company of data analytics, helping companies unlock the value in data analytics. But my background is in finance in 10 years and transformation for another 11 years. So I'm here today with Bejoy, the CEO of NJC Labs, to talk about how finance can actually be helped and enabled by integration. And so we're going to get into that conversation now. Welcome, Bejoy.
Thank you, Matt, and it's great to have you here today with us. And let's start our conversation and see how integration platforms can help your finance functions in the industries. Yeah.
I worked in finance for 10 years, and what I saw is a major challenge was that my role moved from trusted partner to advising the business on how to create value and make efficiencies to essentially moving to confirm and reconcile numbers. And that was the main reason for that was, and this was many years ago, was that more and more people became business analysts or became analysts of data and started creating their own reporting, started creating their own feeds, and you created your own silos of data, essentially. And so finance, while still being the trusted partner, were deemed to then try to understand which number was correct, and that was adding no value. And it's one of the main reasons I moved off into transformation was because it felt like I was adding no value. And I think that's now become a bigger part of today. So what we're seeing in today's environment, Bejoy, is that finance are, while still responsible for the numbers, they're getting many different sources of data and many different feeds of information and reports. It's something I wrote up about, which was essentially death of 1,000 reports. And so the value that they're actually contributing to the organisation has diminished. The reason for this, I believe, is the variety of information that they're getting is just vast. You mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have got too many systems, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Social media apps, IoT is coming into picture, big data, a lot of SaaS applications. Yes, absolutely. The variety gets increased day by day, right? Yeah.
And what I've seen with customers is they're talking about big volumes of data as well now. So You mentioned the IoT. It's just vast data, spatial data, geospatial data coming in. How do they deal with that? And are finance equipped to have that kind of conversation with them?
Yeah, the sensor data, then so I think you need to capture that last, and streaming data coming from various data sources these days, The volume is, of course, a challenge these days. The variety, volume, absolutely,
And
we have
you know where I'm going with this.
we have even more challenges, Right.
And with the world changing, and the reason I got into data is because we've seen a lot of disruption from what people call tech companies. Uber is a great example where they've just come in and disrupted the taxi market essentially, and you've got Airbnb disrupting the hotel market, all in the past, and now people are doing that in banking and in all different industries, just disrupting through having the ability to quickly change course and offer products that customers want. And so how fast that data is moving and how quickly you need to get from idea to action is really driving a lot of the business now. And it's really, I see is being really important for businesses, especially historical businesses like banking, financial institutions, oil and gas that I worked in, really knowing how to make decisions faster to get to value faster.
Yeah. Do you really think these traditional organizations, are they able to implement project faster? The time to market is, of course, a challenge for traditional businesses in comparisons with the newbies out there, right? So.
Well, I mean, this is why we're talking essentially, because I believe, and the reason why I set up my company and the reason why you're working in your company is that if you can essentially bring integration together and create what I would call a golden source that everyone can work from, you're driving value faster because everyone is working in an enterprise way with an enterprise source, improving the quality of that data, working together as an enterprise on that data. So the projects that get fired up with ideas can take that data very quickly. So a great example from when I was the CDO, we essentially started looking at projects that were 6 months turnaround to get the data. We asked for the data, they'd send a CSV file in. We then have to extract, load and transform that data. Very slow, very old process, but that's the way, the traditional route that we followed because that's what everyone used to do. Once we build up a core of golden source of data, one of the largest transformations we did in that business was actually fired up in a couple of days.
Right.
So we actually did a hackathon with that data. We sat down, my team sat down with the business, and they asked questions, and we provided the data, and they helped generate insights to what actions do we need to take to transform the business.
Right.
So
it depends on how the systems are capable of giving you that data or extract the data, right? If you go in the traditional way of extracting CSVs and do an ETL, it's a project on its own, and maybe it takes 6 months to 1 year, right? So by the time there is another like a disruption would have already happened in the market with a new.
Well, the key thing is the right information to the right person at the right time. Yeah. That's basically the strap line of every business. If you can get the right information or the right insight at the right time, you can make the right decision and get to the right action to generate value faster. And that was sort of what we looked at. And I think businesses tend to spend a lot of time doing the traditional route because that's what they're used to, that's what they're happy with. They move that data essentially into a SQL server or something like that they've got. It's a siloed piece of information. They then improve that data so they can visualize it to their customer, and then it's done with. It's sort of maintained in that silo, whereas when you actually bring it out to the whole enterprise to use, the right person at the right time with the right information, that data is already at the best it can be, or it's going to get better with that person using it. So you're continually improving an enterprise set of data.
Right. So that's so you mentioned about the speed. Now the velocity, that's critical here, right? So so that's what we are talking about.
The velocity, yeah, exactly. And the last one we've also touched on, which is by having an enterprise-wide data strategy with integration is a key part of that enabler. You're essentially driving the veracity of that data. You're improving the quality of that data by everyone looking at it, improving it, and wanting to work with that data set. And that's another thing we saw in the business. Yeah,
the quality and reliability is quite important, and it's also important that which is the system of truth, right? So you connect to the source of truth and extract the data, and you should be able to do that. And if every application keep a copy of that, you of course will have duplication of data because you originally have a data in silos, right? So that's what we need to avoid.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You need to avoid essentially working in your silo.
Yeah.
Whilst it may be fast, it may be agile, you're creating a cost to the business.
Right.
And that cost, we had 500 analysts. So if they all had their own silo, there was a cost to the business. They all had their own way of working, which was, they could generate multiple standards for one metric. And what I mean by that, say if you had to identify turnover for the business, and we discussed this downstairs, we could all, if there's say 500 analysts, we could all come up with a different version of turnover, and then it's down to finance, the pressure of finance to say what is the right version, and that adds no value for the business. It wastes time, and time time is money, essentially, in this. I've learnt that more as a business owner than I did when I was working. When I was working, time just went very quickly, and you can really say, are you adding value? And I think with taking it out of silos and putting it into enterprise level data strategy, creating that golden source, as you said, from the system of record, you're all working towards improving that data and all pulling from the same data source, the semantic layer, which it holds the metrics. So you don't need to worry whether you've got turnover right, because the turnover's there, it's being presented, it's owned by finance, or it's owned by sales, whoever is the owner, and then they verify the number. And so you can use that number in any department and know that it's the right number. So it moves away all the problems that you have, as I said, sort of death of 1,000 reports, because you know that every report is using the right number.
So if we summarize our conversation, right? So everything, so you had control before, now you are losing control because of these different issues which we just discussed, right? Say 4 V's, if you summarize in that way: the velocity, the variety, the veracity, and what was the last one?
The volume.
The volume, absolutely. The volume of data is so massive these days, right? It's not even in terabytes. So that's so now the question is, how are we going to solve these challenges, right? Especially finance. If you just look at finance as a department, we have other departments. They have their own issues, but let's focus now in today's discussion. How are we solving these issues of finance? Now, if you look at from an integration perspective, right? So being an integration expert, I'm in the integration space in the last 20 years or so. Worked with a lot of integration platforms. The question is, there are different ways to solve. We can connect application to application. We call that very old style of integration, point to point. Maybe in some use cases it's still relevant, but the challenge here, if you do in point to point, especially when you have good variety of systems and the volume and the velocity, if you look at all these different factors, this point to point can create a spaghetti. That means you will have thousands of point-to-point integrations, at least hundreds of point-to-point integrations in a larger organizations. Now that creates problem to your reliability of data, the quality of data, because you have a lot of duplicate codes being written everywhere. You mentioned about your the finance CFO has got different numbers when they presented that to the CEO, right? So it's all because of the quality of the data, of course. Now, that's a downside with point-to-point integration. Right? So you change something, you forgot to change in another application, then of course the other downstream system will have a wrong data coming in. Now, how can we solve this point-to-point integration? We have got various integration platforms. So you place an integration platform in the middle, and again, will it solve the issues? It may not, because if you use an integration platform, if you still use or implement a point-to-point connectivity using integration platform, still it's not going to solve. So that's where we focus a lot as NJC. We being a Salesforce and Mulesoft partner, we try to address this issue in completely different way using an API-led approach, right? So we remove that point-to-point integration concepts. We put APIs in place. We extract information from each application using APIs, and then we build logic around these APIs. So we don't have this integration logic or orchestration logic everywhere. We rather keep that in a central place, in one place, and we build APIs around it, and then we can reuse this in multiple projects.
I think that really, when we talked about this, when we first spoke about a year ago, I think, it really opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of people use sort of traditional sources and try to get away with what they know, rather than saying, is there a better way to do this? Is there a faster way? Is there a more efficient way? And when you talk to me about Mulesoft and you talk to me about how you can essentially, the project we're looking at for a customer now together, bring in all of their data. They've historically got systems all over the place, and with Mulesoft you can bring it all in, create that single source of data. I mean, for me, what I did took years to basically deliver. And what timeline are we looking at for Mulesoft to do that kind of work?
Yeah, it can be done in weeks to months, right? Depending on the number of systems and a lot of factors, of course, and use cases to implement.
Yeah.
The good thing about Mulesoft is it's a low-code, no-code platform, right? So you don't have to sit and code for months to extract data from the source of truths. So we have connectors with hundreds of systems, 300 plus connectors we have got with, and all. If you look at a SaaS application, for example, we will have already a pre-built connector. So the amount of time we spend on connecting systems is much less in Mulesoft. So you extract the data and then you build APIs so that can be consumed by different consumers, for example, right? So that's the idea which we will work based on.
Yeah, I think people in business, when I was there, you're very busy, just like everyone, and you haven't got time to sort of explore every avenue, and you're leaning on advice of people. What I've experienced now is that I get to sit and listen and actually understand the value that can be created. I mean, your work on open banking as well is something that can be applied across all different industries. I learned about the open banking standards before we talked, but what you're doing in it with Mulesoft is, could you just share a bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in NJC, we built an accelerator or a framework, we call it. It should be a product, but we do not have enough time to make it as a product. But then, so it's a framework. It's called Istika. So what we do is, using this framework, we have different accelerators we built by using Istika as a foundation layer. And we have, like you mentioned, we have open banking accelerator, we have healthcare, we have higher accelerators as well. In particular to open banking, what we have done is we take the open banking standards, CMA9, and for different regions with the standards, and different central banks have their own implementations of open banking standards. So we, for each country, we take this specification, we implement these specifications using Mulesoft as a platform, and which is powered by Istika again, right?
Exactly,
so if traditionally a bank takes like 6 months to 1 year to implement an open banking project, we can do that in weeks because we have all that ready, pre-built in using Mulesoft as a foundation. So we have even integrated with the downstream systems, like for example token management. We integrate with Red Hat Keycloak. We have consent management, account information service, payment information service. All these packaged as one single product in this accelerator.
That's as a person from a finance background, I get hung up on the saving that you mentioned there.
Right.
You sort of glossed over it, but you're saying we're going from months to weeks because it's an accelerator. And I think that's something to go back to the finance angle of how can we accelerate finance using that kind of same process. You can look at building that finance accelerator through Mulesoft and accelerating people's access to multiple systems, both operational and financial, bringing them together to allow them to do things like we did with one customer with the activity-based costing work, and the one we're doing at the moment to show them that they can do the profitability of their sales pipeline from Salesforce very quickly and see the profitability of all the different avenues of revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. So the example or the accelerator which we worked on a few weeks back, right? So the good thing about Mulesoft is it can extract data, whether it's transactional data or batch data. Mulesoft is quite powerful in that. It can support both. So if it's a transactional data, take the data from the source data systems, and if you want to push into data lake, for example, we have connectors. So for example, Azure Data Lake is what we are targeting to build these analytics and insights on. We can easily push, and all this can be done in few days or weeks, right? So the MVPs can be built, show it to business, and then see how the value from a finance perspective and all that cost optimization can be presented initially, and then work on that MVP and extend it much faster. So the time to market for entire this product or piece is much less than if you go into a traditional approach of building.
Yeah. One thing that sort of stuck in my head from that conversation was also you said, people have integration software like Mulesoft. I was in with one customer, they've got Mulesoft, and you said, why are they not using it to do this, to unlock that value? So I did ask that question, and they said, what is Mulesoft? And I think it's, especially with larger organizations, say, I think they've got sort of like 40,000 people in that organization. It's about trying to find the right person. When I was trying to get access to their company's laptop, just finding the right person to give me a laptop. So you imagine trying to find an integration strategy person to say, look, I've got this piece of work, I need to drive value out of it. Who's the right person to talk to? I think that's where companies get stuck on. Yeah. They go with what they know because they're dealing with multiple conversations at once. I did some training for them, but they had an hour in a meeting beforehand, so the training was late because they had to do something for work. So time is precious, and it's really about asking the right questions to unlock that value, I think, and giving people that valuable question to say, what is our integration strategy?
Yeah. And one other aspect is, right, so I have seen a lot of customers, they buy powerful integration platforms like Mulesoft, and they don't use it in the right way, right? So we have got a NJC. What we do is we make use of a framework which Mulesoft recommends, or Salesforce recommends, which is called Catalyst program. So Catalyst look at 3 areas within the organization: the people aspect, the business outcomes, technology. In the people, without enabling the people, we cannot achieve any of this. The exact point you mentioned, you don't even know who to talk to, right? So that's a fundamental problem for larger organization. So even after buying Mulesoft as a platform, if it's not used in the right way, then we are not making use of the platform. So
it's a wasted investment.
It's a wasted, absolutely. It's a wastage of investment in such a powerful platform, right? So we have something called C4E, Center for Enablement, in this framework, Catalyst framework. The idea of that C4E is we form a team, and it's a cross-functional team, by taking members from different areas: enterprise architects, business representatives, and platform architects. Form a team, and it's a cross-functional. It's different than the C4Es, which be like center of excellence we had before, right? So instead of that, it's C4E, Center for Enablement. So this team will act as evangelist by going and talking to different departments, different people, and enable them. We educate them in integration. What's the benefit of creating an API-based approach? How do you invest in the first project, and how you make use of the assets which you built in the first project in the other projects, rather than doing a project every time when there is a requirement. So that evangelization is quite important. So that C4E plays a major role in this entire digital transformation journeys of larger organizations. So that's important.
The 2 things you said there that really strike a chord with me and are the fact that when you're doing data integration, it is a transformation. It affects everyone. And the other thing is that your cross-functional involves the business. Because what I see, in social media and speaking to peers, is that a lot of people miss the point that you're trying to solve business problems. You're not trying to solve data problems. Data is an enabler to business value, pure and simple. And by looking at the business and how the business is running, how the business wants to run in the future, its future strategy, and linking that integration to that strategy, really will help them deliver that strategy faster, in my view.
That's right.
And so I think it's key to say that people need to recognise that when they're engaging with you, that they're doing a transformation, and they need all the hallmarks. My first 10 years was finance. My last 11 years in BP was transformation, and that is all about engagement and all about impact to your stakeholders, to let them know that things are changing and things are working towards a better way. And that may be, I don't know, because I haven't looked at it, maybe why Mulesoft or whatever integration platform they're using doesn't land with the organisation.
Yeah.
Because the way you talk about it so passionately is about using it constantly, ongoing. It's not just a one stop, we'll integrate and then stop. It's something that you use constantly to keep integrating that data, keep using and creating that one source that everyone can use as an enterprise asset.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to create value out of your data, you need to continuously invest and keep on going with your integrations in your organization. And in my last 20 years or so, I was doing integration in different ways.
Yeah.
You need to have integration in your organization.
Absolutely.
It's the only question is how you are going to do the integration, right? So whether you sit and write code for hundreds of days, or you just build using a low code, no code platform, you connect it faster and achieve what you're looking for. So in your data strategy, integration is the key. Without integration, we are not going to solve the data strategy issue.
Exactly.
Right, and we probably will be talking about the data lakes and all of the lake houses of the world and all of that. So without integration, you cannot collect your data. You cannot have insights on the data. So use integration. That's a base, and connect your systems, get the data, and then push it.
Exactly.
Ingesting data using an integration platform would be the key. And yeah.
I know when we first talked, when we first met, your enthusiasm and passion for this really led me to understand. And I've worked with data all the way through, from data engineering all the way through to data science, and now into AI. But it all starts with data integration. We all say that data is the foundation for all advanced analytics like AI. But people don't really understand that until they try and do an AI project and haven't got the data there to deliver that, or the quality of that data. So I think, as you said, people really need to look at their data strategy, their integration strategy. Finance can really play, for me personally, a key part in rebuilding that trust, retaking that control back in the data field, to say that if they manage that enterprise strategy and become more than just a finance person, to look at how do we get trust back in driving value for our organisation. I think you can add a substantial amount of value to all areas.
Yeah, we should now recommend, or at least suggest all the CFOs to keep a close eye on your integration, because integration is the key for all successful projects, right? So maybe if you could tell all your CFO friends out there and
well, I actually chatted to my old boss about this, and he was saying, I think we need to, he's just taken over a company a few years ago now actually, but he was talking about data in a completely different way than when I first spoke to him about it. He was saying, I think we need a CDO, I think we need to bring more data opportunities in-house because they were being advised externally. And I do think, I'm seeing that shift now where people are moving more away from sort of generic advice to people like yourself and myself, where we've done the work, we know the pitfalls, we can make it faster and cheaper to deploy if they use our knowledge and our ways of working. Are you seeing the same?
Yeah, sure. So I was talking to a chief strategist of one of the biggest bank in Africa. So they want to understand how to monetize the data, right? So for example, one of the ways I suggested him was implement open banking, right? For example,
exactly.
It's not that very common in Africa at the moment. So the idea is that you build your APIs, and now you could monetize your infrastructure, your banking infrastructure, using APIs. So that's one of the ways. So now we have got the data. So this is just an example, right? You have the data, you can monetize the data by bringing a service on top of. So exactly by like introducing an API layer, for example, for consumption. That's one way to easily, so you build and sell data services, right? Using API, building an API layer on the top. So so monetizing data is.
One other question that I've got for you, that when I first started out in business, a lot of people tried to sort of pigeonhole me into, your oil and gas, your transformation. You want to be a leader in there, and that's where you'll sort of head. Yeah, they sort of try to put me in that box, and what I found is that my skills are transferable across a whole range, which is essentially transformation in any area. It's the same thing in any industry or any department. And I've worked, if I believed them, I would have been in transformation in oil and gas and stayed there. But I've worked in the building industry. I've worked with rental car companies. I've worked with automotive car parts. I've worked in so many different industries where they just need some help to get things done. Is that the same? You talked about opening banking standards. I know you're in healthcare as well. Can this be applied to any industry, or should people switch off?
No, absolutely. And like we discussed earlier, right, integration challenges there in all the industries, and it's the same.
Exactly, yeah.
The data in silos, the applications don't talk to each other, numerous applications. The 4 V's can be applied everywhere in all the different industries. And now Mulesoft as a platform or integration platform, it's like all the major organizations in the world are using Mulesoft as an integration platform. So
not all of them well though.
No, that's the point. That's where we are.
Exactly.
The right way, the right time. That's quite important.
Yeah.
So we recommend the best way to use Mulesoft as a platform for enterprise customers. Now, to answer your question, yes, it can be applied in all different industries, and we specialize in BFSI. We have accelerators built for wealth asset management space, open banking, alone in the BFSI, and healthcare accelerator we have got.
Yeah.
The good thing about Mulesoft is it can talk to systems like HIS, LIS systems. We have got HL7 connectors, or if it's a fire standard wants to be built, we can build APIs in open standards. Mulesoft has got all these capabilities in all the different industries. We specialize in healthcare, BFSI, higher ed, and manufacturing space. So these are the areas we focus at the moment. But it doesn't mean that we don't work in other. We have customers across most of these industries. But yeah.
Now, the other thing that we talked about was cost, and you talked about sort of, in my experience, sort of how would you share the cost of an implementation, and what I'd rather talk about is the value it generates, if you can. What I see is, and I've seen this countless times, is that siloed data is a cost. You've got a server being maintained with some data in it, or maybe it's held even worse on a laptop. We had one when I first started, and it said, "Do not switch off this laptop." I'm not joking you. Multi-billion-dollar organization, and it said, "Do not switch off this laptop," because it was running all the calculations. I kid you not. And for me, there's a lot of value in having an enterprise integration strategy, but you've done these, you've actually seen that value created. Could you talk a bit more about what you see as the value of doing
of course. And maybe before we go in that, right, so one of the challenge I had in all these major implementation was, who is going to bear the cost of this implementation, right? So that's often the challenge, especially for larger organization. Should it be funded by the IT or a line of business? And so from a finance perspective, right, by wearing the finance hat, how would you take this, and who should actually bear the cost, and what do you think is the right approach?
Well, for me, there are politics in play in any large organisation. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, but you've got to look at the total value that you're delivering, and then the costs should, as part of revenue recognition, should be attributed to that value that you're creating for the organisation. So I think if it's part of a larger, as I said to you, sort of a transformation, it's a transformational piece. It should be part of that transformation and delivery. There's a value to that. You're turning the ship of the organisation to point in a different direction. You need that data to support that organisation going forward in a sustainable way. there's a value to that. That value should attribute the cost of that transformation to it. Now, whether it's in a function, you mentioned open banking, it would be in the open banking department, for example, that's realizing that value. The cost should be attributed to that. I don't think IT should bear the costs. I think IT should be responsible for making sure the costs are appropriate. One thing I think that I've learned about over my years is total cost of ownership, and what is that cost for the business. Many people just blindly go into getting a piece of software and then find it costs them millions. Data lakes, I was one of those people. You put everything into your data lake because that's what you're told, and then you find it costs a lot of money. So I think understanding that total cost of ownership should be an IT responsibility, but also they can't be expected to bear a cost that they're not seeing the value from. That value and cost needs to be attributed so you can get the profitability in a finance view. So I think more and more IT departments need to be recognised as a support and an enabler, especially in this data-driven world, to getting that data, to advising you, to unlocking value. But traditional, we're going back to traditional thinking. They were seen as keeping the lights on, making sure your computer switched off and on again. And there's so much more to them now. As we mentioned, 900 applications. How do we make those all work together? How do we seamlessly get that data to drive value? Is all something IT can help with. So I think people need to shift their mindset to help me unlock the value. IT, not make sure it turns on in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now you are more aligned to Mulesoft then. So we talk about the same thing always, right? You make IT as an enabler, right?
Exactly.
Because IT always have a limited capacity of resources.
Of course,
so
yeah.
If it's
same as finance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finance are a cost center.
But the pressure on IT is increasing day by day. Because now IT has got every day to keep up with the new requirements. So you integrate another SaaS application every week, for example, these days.
Yeah.
Or you implement AI, ML, APIs and all SaaS. All these integrations are putting a lot of pressure. And IT's strength is not like increasing in an exponential way, but the work on them is increasing on an exponential
Absolutely.
way. So the best way, from an integration perspective, right, what we think is the right way to do is, like you pointed out, enable IT. We need to make IT as enabler.
Yeah.
So you expose all the capabilities of the underlying system or downstream systems in your organization, and then you ask business to consume the services which IT exposes. So if there is a new business case to be implemented, the IT would create some services, APIs for example,
Yeah.
and that would be consumed by business, different lines of businesses. And that's the way. So you don't start a project every time, or you don't ask IT to start a project every time. IT will, yes, of course, the first time they will have to enable, but once they enable, different lines of businesses can consume that. Now, this can be directly related to the cost aspect as well. So the first enablement part, yes, IT will bear that cost. Once that services are exposed or APIs are exposed by the IT from each of these downstream systems, now business can consume that in a self-service mode. So that time the cost of consumption can be borne by business.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't need to ask IT every time to start a project. Now you have got the asset. Business can self-serve from them.
Exactly.
So you make business independent.
Yeah.
IT as an enabler. Right. So that's a story we always say. So,
yeah, it's the age-old thing, and politics do get in the way of collaboration. It's all about collaborating for the stakeholder value, or whoever is your ultimate value for the business strategy. And I think you as a CEO, it's led from the top. It's how you set up your organisation for success. If everyone's judged by their own department, their own profitability, their own ways of working, you see people arguing over internal costs. We had countless conversations over transfers of internal costs when actually overall for BP there was no change. It was just moving from left pocket to right pocket. And by releasing the organisation from that pressure of this cost must sit in IT because it's an IT cost, but actually the value is going to this area, releasing them from that pressure and saying, this is a business decision, this enables the whole business, frees them up. And we had it when we were doing SAP implementations, multi-million-dollar cost. I wanted to get some of my software updated, but they had no budget because it was all taken by the SAP implementation. That's, for me, the wrong way to think about it, because you have business as usual and you have projects, and those projects are done because they're meant to be adding value, and that cost should be attributed to that value so the other parts of the business can still keep going, still keep collaborating and still run. I think that's the way people need to think about it, is essentially that it's driving value, so the cost should be attributed to the value, and then that takes the pressure off IT. It makes the business accountable for that value delivery, and they want to work more to ensure that that value is being realised.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we have got a model together. I think we are aligned in terms of what our thinking is, which is really a great thing, and I think we can take a break. So so Matt, we've been discussing various things, and if we summarize all of this, right? So the 4 V's was something which we started.
Yeah, absolutely.
The volume, velocity, variety, and veracity. So these are the 4 key challenges finance functions faces, and it's applicable in all different industries, I suppose. Yeah.
And I also don't think they're actually facing that, or understanding they're facing that challenge.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's an underlying challenge that they're being hit with.
Right.
But it comes back as a finance problem.
Yeah. And the question was, how do we solve this? We have different ways, point to point, but that's not the right way, because that introduces more issues, or accelerate the issues which we already have. Then we discussed about integration platform. Of course, we being a Mulesoft partner, we of course recommend always Mulesoft as an integration platform to solve these challenges.
Yeah.
4 V's. So yeah, so that was the summary which we thought of. This is how I summarize. And you want to add anything on top of this?
Yeah, I think it's been a great conversation. Thanks for taking the time to come today and speak about how we can use integration in a better way. I think that's the key. Finance can be involved and more collaborative with their IT partners. And what I see this happening, if we can build that enterprise strategy, build that enterprise set of data, you're essentially connecting the whole organisation, and you're connecting them to allow them to build insight. It's something that I call connected intelligence, which essentially allows the organisation to drive from idea to action to value faster.
Right.
And it's been great talking to you today about how people can enable that. And one of the key things I think to underline and finish the conversation is that I want to put across is that it doesn't have to be done over a massive time period of a number of years. Most transformations I did were 2-3 year transformations. Data transformations like this, enabled by Mulesoft, can be done in weeks or months, and people can start unlocking that value almost immediately. Is that?
Absolutely. I think the very smart way of putting it, right? The intelligent connectivity and using integration platform like Mulesoft absolutely is the smart way of doing that. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Thanks for your time, Bejoy.
Thanks for your time too, Matt. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you. Thank you.